Hello again. Good to see you all. I'll be bringing the message this morning. As I was considering, part of what I've been thinking about and what we've been kind of reflecting on is the shape of the teaching for the year and how we're going to lay it out to cover, both what God brings up to us and also some of the key points of the transitional time we're going through and anchoring it to this theme that I feel like we've been given around a year on our knees. As I was thinking about that and considering where we stand at the start of the year, one thing that I was thinking about was some of those different pictures of kneeling that we see in the Bible and the scriptures and what they can mean. So there's lots of different reasons that people kneel down. There's lots of different things that represents, appeal for mercy, a plea for help, all these kinds of things. And I thought that one of the, and I was considering which would be good to start with, and I came up with one type of kneeling in particular, and let's see if we can pick what it is. Can we have the video? Thank you. That's from Lord of the Rings. It's from wonderful, wonderful set of books and movies with a lot of fantastic Christian imagery and lessons to be learned. So this is from the very tippity end of the book. Spoiler alert, the goodies win. But all the way through, they've been fighting this great evil, and they've got the big armies, and that's the great king, the good king, who's been restored, who's been leading the battles against the evil armies. But alongside this big narrative, you've got these little out-of-the-way hobbits, these kind of diminutive folk, who have been on this other mission to secretly go around and kind of sacrifice everything to kind of destroy this weapon of the enemy. And they'd sacrificed everything to do it, these kind of small people off at the side. And at the end, they defeat the enemy, and it's the great coronation of the king, the great king, and these four little hobbits are there. And there's this moment where recognizing what we as an audience have seen this whole way through these movies of these humble, hard-working, diligent, overlooked hobbits who've been going and working at it. And ultimately, they were the ones that saved the day. It wasn't the big battles, it wasn't everything else. And the good king acknowledges that it's not him, but it's actually these who deserve the respect. And they all kneel in gratitude. And it's a very powerful moment in the context of what happens. And I thought that was a good place to start, was this idea of kneeling in gratitude. And it's something that comes up a lot in the Bible. There's a couple of reasons why I wanted to do it at the start. In a sense, it's a pretty simple one, gratitude. What is it to be grateful? It's kind of, you say thanks for stuff. It's a bit of a no-brainer in many senses. But it doesn't exist within a vacuum. And it's something that I think will have to be something we revisit as we carry on through some of the different other aspects of what it means to come before God on our knees. Gratitude in the Bible, lots and lots of passages about gratitude or where gratitude is expressed. Can you think of any passages about gratitude? Any leap to mind? I've told you there's lots, so it should be extra shameful if you can't think of any. Yes, Mary anointing Christ's feet. Yes, absolutely. The 10th leper, Ripper. Excellent, Paul. Yes. Jesus heals the 10 lepers and they go off rejoicing, and only one of them comes back to say thank you, to pay homage. Absolutely. Mephibosheth. Did I say it right? We all know that, but could you expand on that, Jeff? Yes, brought up to the table. He overlooked out of the way and brought up and honoured at the table. Good pull. Lots of syllables in that name. Judy. Yes, yes. The man who had 1,000 demons in him, and Jesus cast them out. Now, they were kneeling for a different reason. We'll cover that. But this man then comes and throws himself at the feet of Jesus and wants to give everything straight away to him. And we see that a lot in the response that different people have. Often unexpected people like, Zacchaeus and the Matthew. Excellent stories. We look at things like, it's also expressed things like Psalm 100, the start of Psalm 100. Shout for joy to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful songs. Know that the Lord is God. It is he who made us. We are his people, the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him and praise his name, for the Lord is good and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations. And as we read on, especially we look at places like the epistles, over and over again, there is a command. There is an imperative to be grateful. I think of places like in Thessalonians, rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. So, what is gratitude? What is gratitude? I asked Ari, and she said, it is thankfulness. And I said, that's a synonym. And then we got into an argument about what synonyms are. I think she was right. But what is gratitude? It is being thankful, appreciating something that's been said. We kind of know it when we see it. It's kind of a gut thing. We know what gratitude is. We know what thankfulness is. When we teach our kids manners, we teach them please and thank you. It's kind of, this is something that's kind of an expected thing. And we know that it's important. It grates on us when we see it missed or when we experience it being missed. You think about, I think of times in my life where I've seen it and it's kind of stung a bit. I remember a teacher that I had going out of their way hand-making cards for each of the students and buying them a lollipop each that was attached to each of the cards. And the first response from the kid coming up was, oh, lollipop, I kind of preferred chocolates. Oh, come on. Or I remember seeing, there was a video that went viral, this teenager who got their license and they come out the front, the parent takes them out the front of the house and they bought them their own BMW, but it's the wrong colour. And so they start whinging and complaining about it. Something missing there. Or I remember seeing a long time ago, it was a Facebook community post, and someone had posted up saying they needed help. They needed their furniture had broken or something like that. It was a couch or something. And someone messaged and said, well, you know what? I've got a spare one. It's in great nick, but I don't really need it. I'd be happy for you to have it. And then they messaged back saying, oh, great. Can you please deliver it for me? And they said, well, actually, no, I haven't got the means. And then they responded angrily and said, well, why don't you hire a trailer and bring it to me? Oh, it hurts, doesn't it? We know it when we see it, don't we? But even little things like, you let someone in on the freeway and they don't kind of wave their hand in thanks. Or you hold the elevator door for someone and they don't even look at you. Or, we feel it. There's an expectation of what people should do in response to when you do something nice for them. When people do good things, they should get recognition and praise. So why does it hurt when we miss it? I think it's pretty simple, isn't it? I think one simple explanation is kind of the basic societal one. One of the definitions is, to show appreciation for good things that are done. The word appreciate kind of means to kind of evaluate, to put a price on something. And if you do it correctly, if you really appreciate what someone's done for you, then you respond appropriately, like overpaying or underpaying. And the inverse of this might be to fully appreciate when someone does something wrong, you expect that they'll get a punishment or they'll be, be met with the appropriate response. When someone gets off for a crime, it grates, we feel annoyed about it. In the same way, when someone misses out on something positive that they just, deserve, it grates as well. This can be big stuff like going to prison or getting an award. It can be little stuff like, we often kind of inform it by frowning at people doing something wrong, or, rolling our eyes at people, or on the inverse, maybe giving a smile to someone who we see doing the right thing. From little to small, we kind of, as a society, reinforce the rules of how things are supposed to be. Rewarding positive behaviour and punishing negative behaviour and things like that. But I remember years ago, I was working maintenance at the Radisson Hotel. And I'd been there for only a couple of months actually, but I was working it through and we were doing all sorts of things. And one of the house managers had gone around and decided that she wanted the best mattresses. She wanted to have good quality mattresses, and so she'd got the house stuff to go through, and any that had anything kind of subpar, weren't bouncy or had been too long, got taken down. And she decided that rather than just chucking them out, she was going to go out of her way, get in contact with a charity that took used mattresses from hotels and places and then gave them to people in need. So, if people were starting a house that couldn't afford a mattress, they'd pass them on. And so she'd invited them in. So I had them all kind of laid out downstairs, and the lady arrived with the truck, the representative from the charity. And she went through and she ended up rejecting about 2/3 of them because they were kind of, they had scratches or they were soiled or the springs were kind of, or they weren't kind of good enough quality. And so I loaded up the ones that she wanted and left. But then I remember as we headed out the hallway, me and the house manager who'd kind of selected them, she was furious at the fact that they'd turned back some of the mattresses. How dare these people who are in need say no to what we're offering? And I remembered kind of being struck by that and thinking, well, I don't think that's quite right. And I happen to know, we'd talked about faith before. I know she had a faith and kind of she was trying to express it in those terms. But I was thinking, do we have that right to expect gratitude? Do we do it because we expect social reward or affirmation for the things that we do? Or are we kind of misfiring in this? I think we've already talked about the idea of conforming to the pattern of this world and how God calls us to live in a different way. One thing that I found that I did a lot when I was preaching over in England was that I'd refer to these two kind of the old life and the new life a lot. And you see that a lot, especially in the epistles when it's talking about the way that Christians are called to be and what it looks like to be a Christian. And I found it quite helpful, especially when I was dealing with topics rather than doing like an exegetical work on pulling stuff out of a particular passage. Looking at topics, I found it helpful to kind of to put up and reflect on, well, what does it mean to live in a new life, and how is that different to the old patterns in the old life? Looking at my old life, or the way that the world works, what's the difference between the two? Because if it's just what works well, then it's kind of just like a self-help thing, or it can just kind of be kind of a thematic thing. Well, it's good to be nice to people, so let's be kind. So what does it actually mean? What's distinctive about being Christian that kind of fits this? And we are called, as we see in the Beatitudes and places like that, to not just do things in order to get a response, but in fact, intentionally, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. When we help people, we do it with no expectation of return or reward. We disconnect ourselves from the social reward of I do something good and I get my feedback and that means I'm okay. And when I don't get that, well, I'm not helping them again. Instead, it becomes, well, actually, where do I get my social feedback from? Where do I get my approval? What's the basis by which I do this that can possibly kind of carry me through the lack of gratitude that I get in lots of different places? We need to get that from God. Yes, very good. That's right. That comes from God. The God who gave to me before I was able to be grateful for it. I remember one of my favorite communion talks Laura Cannon did. Another of my favourites, obviously, was today, Laura Smith. But I remember Laura Cannon did one with Evie, and she got her up and she gave her I can't remember, $10 note. She gave her a $10 note, and Evie came up And he said, Evie, I'd like to give this to you. And Evie said, oh, thanks, and took it, and then ran off down. And the point was, if she'd gotten one of us up and said, here, I'd like to give you this, what happens? We go, oh, no. I couldn't possibly, I'll pay you back, or what can I give you in return? Or we try to kind of balance the social equilibrium of what's expected and so there's no outstanding debt, and it's kind of all these kinds of things. And her point was, which I thought was magnificent, was we can't do that with God. There's no way we can balance what we get from God with what we do for him or how we behave. And if we need to do that first, it's not going to happen. And that can be a real separation between us and God. We need to be good enough first. It's gift. It's pure gift that comes from God. So why is this imperative in the Bible about gratitude, about being grateful? Was Evie wrong that she didn't sit there and kind of bow and, genuflect or the rest of it? Well, no. But as we continue on, gratitude comes from a growing understanding of exactly what God has done. At that stage, I would say that Evie didn't even really know what $10 was particularly. Even if she understood the currency, even if she understood that, she might have gone, great, do you think I could afford a lollipop with this? Or next thing she might have said, forget that, I'll just buy us a new car. Hadn't got a sense of the weight of what was given. And the more she understood that, and as kind of we explained, well, what does $10 actually equip her to do? The depth of her gratitude for what Laura had done only grew. Not that there wasn't gratitude before, but, the idea, well, actually, that's worth a lot of lollipops, Once that was converted into a language, $10 is a lot of lollipops. Less now than it used to be, but still a lot of lollipops. When we come to God, he gives to us without an expectation that we will ever, in this life, be able to be appropriately grateful for the scope of what he has done for us. But the more we get to know him, and this is where I'm saying I think we'll need to come back to this as we go through and look at the different aspects of who God is and what it means for us to be coming before him. As we know God more, the depth of our gratitude still does grow, and it grows towards deeper understanding. And that's what maturity is. And it's a practice of reflecting on that and going to God. So we don't generate gratitude. Have you ever been at a table, where maybe dad says, you will eat it and you will be grateful for eating it, You can't generate gratitude. That the thank you given to Nana for that awful sweater, it's not, you don't generate the gratitude. You might be able to reflect on actually what's given, and with maturity, that might become more sincere. But it goes the other way around. It's reflecting on the other. It's reflecting on God that enhances our sense of gratitude and broadens our own smile and resilience as we continue to go back to him. As we consider gratitude, as we kind of reflect on what it means to be grateful, I thought again we might finish up by spending some time in prayer, in reflecting. And again, the object of this isn't to create gratitude, to say the loudest, most aggressive thank you, but it is to reflect on who is God? What kind of person is he? If you're someone who's got a testimony, have got a life where you've heard from God, it pays to think about, what has God done in my life? What has God done for me? If perhaps you haven't got that, or you feel like you're not in a place where you can see that, I promise you that time spent reflecting on God and the world that we were in will yield you more things to be grateful for than things that you can complain about or criticize. I set that challenge before you. I remember, no, I'm going to save that story. It's a ripper though. So I'll open up, I'll say a short prayer. We'll have some time of silence where you can reflect on who is God? What has he done for me? What has he done for the world? What has he created? Look around. What good thing is there in this world that you can see? Chairs.